Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who love plants.
But not always the same ones. I'm Carol Collins. I'm associate editor at Fine Gardening Magazine.
Hi, and I'm Danielle Sherry. I'm the executive editor at Fine Gardening Magazine. And Carol, I listen to a lot of podcasts. You listen to a fair number too, correct?
I do. I actually have an app called Podcast Addict, so that
Uh,
tells you something.
There you go. Well, all right. Through my, I listen through Spotify. This is not an ad, not a plug. They don't sponsor us, but they could. Hey, Spotify, want to sponsor us? All of my podcasts took a summer break. You know what? We didn't take a summer
A
break.
summer break.
So, we've been at this long enough, as our producer Carrie said, 6, 7, 8. How many years has it been? But we've never done a best of episode. Never, ever, ever.
That's wild. It's time. We should do one.
It is. And we could use a little break because right now we are gathering all the content for the magazine and the website for 2024. Traveling like crazy. You've been to Michigan. You've been to California. I've been to Milwaukee. I've been to Seattle. We're tired. So guess what, kids? We put together this amazing episode for you, which is, Carol,
The best of the guests. We're going to have some. And they're not all of our best are the guests. Let's be clear, right?
Yes.
These are just some that jumped to mind that we thought we'd like to hear again.
Absolutely. So you picked 2 guests. I picked 2 guests. We go all the way back to episode 30 something. And now we're in the almost 150s. And you picked some more modern guests that probably the audio quality will be a lot better on. So who came to mind for you, best guest, that jumped out when we started this whole idea?
So this is one of my favorite authors to work with. It's Irvin Etienne. He is in outside of Indianapolis, Indiana, and he covered upgraded classics, which I just also thought that was such a fun topic. And so instead of just a few plants, you get the classic and then you get the upgrade. And what I like about Irvin, he's been gardening in public for decades, and he really knows his plants. He knows how they perform. He is not afraid to try new things. So I thought, yeah, let's bring Irvin into the best of the guests episode.
I love it. And, Irvin is a funny guy too. So I'm sure it's laced with humor. I can't remember this expert guest, so I'm excited to listen back to this segment.
Hello, I'm Irvin Etienne, curator of herbaceous plants and seasonal garden design at the Garden at New Fields. I'm here to share a few updated classes with you all. All the plants I talk about, I'm either growing currently or I have grown in the past. So everything is based on real life experience, not catalog descriptions. So let's go. The classic is Nephophia flamenco, and my update is Nephophia mango popsicle. Mango popsicle will be hardy in zone 6 to 9, probably 18 inches tall and wide as far as the foliage clump is concerned, but your flower will be 2 to 3 feet tall, so it really shows up nicely above the foliage. The update here is the bloom time. This plant will bloom from June to October easily. I still have 1 or 2 in bloom now. So the update is definitely the length of flowering, and I think probably the color as well. Just a beautiful, beautiful mango color. For those of you that think orange is harsh, this is a much softer color and works in most any color scheme, especially with blues and purples. Again, the updated is Nephophia mango popsicle. My next classic is Hibiscus Fireball, and the updated version is Hibiscus Holy Grail, hardy in zone 4 to 9. Holy Grail wants full sun, average soil. It'll even tolerate soil that's a little bit on the wet side because it carries Hibiscus mosquito's blood in it. The updates come in multiple areas. Foliage, Holy Grail has incredible black foliage as opposed to the normal green of Fireball. It also has better form. I love Fireball, but it tends to lean or fall over even. Holy Grail stays nice and upright, truly a shrub that holds its presence. The next thing is the flower power. Holy Grail blooms and blooms and blooms. I still have blooms on my plants. It just simply produces more flowers over a longer period of time. It's really beautiful because you've got that black foliage with these big 8 to 9 inch blooms. It's a really great contrast between the black foliage and the red flower. Again, my updated version is Hibiscus Holy Grail. Next is Agapanthus, the classic being Agapanthus Stormcloud, the updated version Agapanthus Galaxy Blue, hardy in zone 6 to 10. It'll be about 2 to 3 feet in flower, foliage maybe 15 inches tall. Clumps can get to 2 feet or more across in time. I'm really anxious to see that development. You want them in full sun and ideally good drainage, especially in winter. Now, the update here, zone 6, an Agapanthus or Blue Nile lily if you like, Agapanthus, hardy to zone 6. That is new for us. I would say that I would mulch the first year or two to help it get established, but all the same, definitely worth trying. It's not very often we get new blue flowers for the garden. Agapanthus Galaxy Blue also blooms for months, so you got lots of color all summer long, and hardy to zone 6. You're going to love this one. By all means, try it. My next plant is a shrub, the classic being Buddleia Black Knight, the updated version Buddleia Grand Cascade, hardy in zone 5 to 10. Grand Cascade to get 5 to 6 feet tall, 7 to 8 feet wide. Now you do want full sun like all the other Buddleias or butterfly bushes, and good drainage. I point out immediately that there's a lot of variation in flower color between these two. My classic Black Knight has very dark flowers, dark purple flowers. Grand Cascade has lavender flowers. So once we get that out of the way, we can look at the other things. One being flower size. Grand Cascade has flowers over 1 foot long. I had one last year that was close to 2 feet long. 4 inches across. The clusters can be 4 inches across. Incredible flower power. They're still blooming. Form. It has this beautiful, graceful form because the flowers cascade, as the name suggests, cascade. So it has this wonderful weeping effect to it. Most of the Buddleias have gotten dinged for seeding around, the classics I mean. Breeding has solved a lot of that. And Grand Cascade, I've had it for 3 years. I've not had a single seedling yet. So it sounds to me like this is going to be one with few or no seeds. Again, my updated one is Buddleia Grand Cascade. Absolutely gorgeous in flower and form. Highly recommend that plant. My final plant is a small tree. The classic Albizia julibrisson or silk tree. The update, Albizia julibrisson summer chocolate. Hardy in zone 6 to 9, same as the straight species. Summer chocolate will get 15 to 20 feet tall and wide. You want it in full sun. It'll tolerate a wide range of soils. Now it is only hardy to zone 6, so there is a limit in how many people can grow it, I'm sure. But the big improvement here is the foliage color. Summer chocolate, as the name suggests, has chocolate foliage. It's absolutely gorgeous. This lacy chocolate umbrella-shaped plant almost. It's just gorgeous in the landscape. Gives a very tropical feel. Wonderful, wonderful texture in addition to the color. It also flowers, a pink flower, kind of pom-pom shape, but you're really growing this for the foliage. Now, it is only hardy to zone 6, so if we have a really harsh winter, it can get killed back. If that happens, you want to watch the new growth because it's a grafted plant. Your new growth could come from the rootstock and remain green, or it can come from the graft and be chocolate. The chocolate foliage starts out green, so you got to give it a little time. When that new growth starts, Give it at least 2 weeks, maybe longer, until you know for sure what parts are chocolate, what parts are green. The green parts you cut out. In general, even if we have a mild winter, feel free to cut it back, to shape it, to keep the size down, whatever you want to do. Now, albizia is known as an invasive in some areas, but way up here in the Midwest, it's not a serious problem at all. I don't expect any seedlings from my chocolate whatsoever. But again, I'm in zone 6, so I'm at its upper limit. So respect that. Again, albizia summer chocolate, gorgeous tropical plant in appearance, but a hardy plant in reality. I hope you enjoy a few of these in your garden. Whatever you do, please have fun. Thank you.
Oh, Carol, that Irving, he's great.
He's great. He's just fun to listen to. And like I said, he knows so much.
He does. And that's, you know what, that's a complicated assignment to give an expert. It's not just straight up, hey, give me your 4 best fall natives. It's something that's a little more complex. You got to think about it a bit more. So let's stay in the Midwest. And the first guest that jumped to mind for me was probably, it was back at episode 37, and it was the best vines, which is a topic that we really haven't covered that much on the podcast. I think maybe once or twice we've talked about vines, and I wanted to go to Richard Hockey, who's plant evaluation manager at the Chicago Botanic Garden. He's been a contributing editor for us for many, many, many years. And I wasn't sure if Richard's extremely dry sense of humor would translate to, a guest segment, but oh my God, it really did. He tells an anecdote at the beginning of this expert testimony about his neighbor shouting at him from down the street, and it somehow ties in with how people pronounce clematis or clematis that still had me rolling, even when I reheard this segment. All right. So Carol, have you heard this one? Because this will be a treat.
I can't wait. No, I haven't, because this goes back before my time, right? So I am so excited. And he's so great. I love Richard.
All right. Let's hear Richard's take on his favorite vines.
Hi, I'm Richard Hockey, plant evaluation manager at the Chicago Botanic Garden. We've tried a lot of vines, including a boatload of clematis over the years, and I'd like to share a few of my favorite hardy ones with you now. Let me start by saying there are so many amazing clematis that selecting just a few is really difficult for me. I like clematis of all types and colors. It borders on an obsession, really. At one time, I had 15 different clematis in my tiny garden, and I was still shopping for more. When it's all said and done, my choices are not just about flower size and color, but about vigor, easy care, and reliability. With these traits in mind, I'm mostly drawn to group 3 clematis. The 3 groups are a classification based on when clematis flower and how they should be pruned. Group 1 and 2 flower on old wood, so pruning occurs after flowering. Group 3 clematis bloom on new wood, so a hard cutback in late winter is best. I also like group 3 because they require so little care, and I am one of the laziest gardeners I know. People always ask if I'm pronouncing clematis correctly, and surprisingly, that's not the only word I get questions on. I tell them that Americans tend to say clematis, which rhymes with lattice, but since I worked with the British plant breeder Ray Evison to establish my trial, I say clematis like the Brits. Whatever pronunciation you choose, please don't be like my neighbor Carol. Years ago, I gave her a clematis, and when it flowered for the first time, she yelled at me down the block, "You should come see the chlamydia you gave me." I just turned around and went back inside. My first recommendation is Clematis Guernsey Cream, a beautiful creamy yellow flowered form that blooms in late May to mid-June in Chicago. It's best planted in an eastern exposure where bright sunlight won't wash out the soft color. It's one of the most reliable clematis I've grown, and since it's a group 2 clematis, it only needs light pruning after the flowers are done. It's a compact vine, 5 to 6 feet tall, with flowers 5 inches wide. Like all clematis, Guernsey cream likes plenty of sunlight but a cool root zone. Another group 2 clematis that I just can't get out of my mind is Rutel. The deep purple-red flowers feature ruffled edges and same-colored stamens, which is a monochromatic look that I love in clematis. The large 7-inch flowers come on strong from early June to mid-July. Plants are only about 6 feet tall, so great for small gardens or in containers. Sadly, as beautiful as it is, I've never taken a photograph of Rutel that truly captures the exquisite flower color. This is one you have to see in person. Blue Angel is one of my all-time favorites with a ton of pale rosy blue flowers from early June to early August. I don't think I've ever seen a more prolific bloomer, and I've evaluated over 200 clematis. Flowers are 4.5 inches wide, and it grows to 12 feet in a year. Group 3 clematis like Blue Angel bloom at the end of new stems, so if you don't cut these tall ones back every year, the flowers just keep getting further and further away from you, and the old stems are bare without foliage. I don't know about you, but I'd rather not look at bare stems and then have my neighbor enjoy the best floral views. I've loved red-flowered Madame Julia Corvan ever since the first time I saw her in 1988, and she remains one of my favorite plants in my own garden. Madame Julia Corvan blooms a bit earlier than most Viticella types, mid-June in my Chicago garden, although early July is more typical at the Chicago Botanic Garden. It was a great combination with the pale pink-flowered New Dawn rose. I've been obsessed with Princess Diana for a very long time. The deep rosy pink tulip-shaped flowers are lovely and freely produced from late June to early October. Princess Diana is vigorous and can get to 10 feet tall in a year. After a few years of coveting it, I finally got Princess Kate, which has a similar flower form, but is creamy white with a rosy violet reverse. It does make me wonder if there's a Prince Meghan on the way. When we planted up the trial, we put Princess Diana a good distance from Prince Charles, for obvious reasons, right? Then one day, to our surprise, Prince Charles had grown one very long stem over several other clematis to entwine itself with Princess Diana. You can't make this stuff up. I first saw variegated kiwi vine, Actinidia colomicta, growing wild in Korea in 1989. We saw it from across a river and were intrigued by the silvery white and pink leaves scattered throughout the plant. Since there was no bridge nearby, we had to work a little harder to see it up close, but it was well worth it. This novel trait keeps this Actinidia from being just another large green blob that ate your fence. Actinidia has male and female plants. The leaves of the male plants are reportedly more colorful, although I have not confirmed this personally, but the female plant produces the small edible kiwi-like fruits. Now, you will need both plants if you want the fruit. The robust vigor of this vine is undeniable. It is fast-growing, 15 to 20 feet tall, and needs a very strong support. Climbing hydrangea, Hydrangea anomala subspecies petiolaris, is one of the best woody vines for multiple seasons. It features lush, dark green leaves, large flat heads of creamy white flowers in June and July, deep red-brown peeling bark, and yellow fall color. It climbs by adventitious roots that attach the stems to the wall or structure, so you don't have to provide a trellis or wires for it to grow on. One of its best features is the horizontal stems that cantilever out from the plant, giving it a three-dimensional aspect other vines don't have. It is long-lived and can grow to 50 feet tall, but can be used quite nicely as a ground cover too. It has a reputation of being slow to establish. I've grown it multiple times and have not experienced this. The closely related Japanese hydrangea vine, Schizophragma hydrangioides, is often equated with climbing hydrangea, but is really quite different. It too is a large woody vine to 30 feet tall, but its stems are not cantilevered. They lay flat against the growing surface. Its large flower heads also feature a mix of sterile and fertile flowers, but in this case, the sterile florets are a single petal shaped like a guitar pick, where the climbing hydrangea is four-parted like a clover. I love all the cultivars, Roseum, Strawberry Leaf, Jane Platt, but Moonlight is particularly stunning with a silvery overlay on the leaves. I had the good fortune of seeing this and climbing hydrangea growing together in the wild in Korea. In that situation, you really could see how different these two plants are. Growing Parthenocissus henriana, the silver vein creeper, was a long-time dream for me because it's borderline hardy in zone 5. I've successfully overwintered it and eagerly await its emergence every spring. It's not stem hardy, but it is root hardy. Its distinctive leaves have 3 to 5 leaflets, like Virginia creeper, but with beautiful silver veins and deep burgundy undersides. Leaves are often flushed with purple during the summer, and it has a great red fall color. In milder climates, it will get to 35 feet tall, but here I've only gotten it to 12 feet up my garage. That's not bad, considering it has to start over every spring. We don't commonly recommend the Japanese and Chinese wisterias because of their aggressive habit and unreliable flower bud hardiness in severe winters. In warmer areas where they flower profusely, they can and have become invasive. Instead, we look to the American wisteria, Wisteria frutescens. By the way, the Kentucky wisteria, Wisteria macrostachys, has been lumped in with frutescens, but I think plants by both names are still commonly sold. The fragrant lilac purple flowers are about 12 inches long and first open in June, repeating sporadically throughout the summer. Its habit is more restrained than the Asian species, getting to about 25 feet tall. American wisterias don't require hard pruning in every landscape, but I prune mine hard in late winter so it doesn't overwhelm my pergola. A couple of years ago, it enveloped a big part of my garage roof because I got lazy, and I'm pretty sure there were possums living in it.
Oh, the part that I had forgotten was that they planted Princess Di clematis next to Prince Charles clematis, but very distanced away in the trial, and Prince Charles grew over to try and touch Princess Diana.
Ooh, romantic or creepy?
I don't know. I'm going with creepy, I think. Well, probably you did not pick a creepy guest. Who is next on your list, Carol?
Okay, definitely not creepy. She's lots of fun. This is Sabrina Schweier. She's from Akron, Ohio. And we had her talk about, in episode 98, problem-solving perennials, which just another fun, great topic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's a solid topic that I feel like we could do 80 times and people would still love it. But yeah, okay, let's hear what Sabrina has to say about problem-solving perennials.
Hello, fellow plant lovers. My name's Sabrina Schweier. My husband Samuel and I operate a landscape design firm grounded in ecology and permaculture, Salisbury Schweier Inc. in Akron, Ohio. We work primarily with homeowners in our bioregion, creating eco-mindful landscapes. As a designer and a consultant, I see a lot of challenging sites. In Northeast Ohio, we get extremes. Sometimes it's hot and dry, then we get torrential downpours, cold winters, and salt trucks. Or sometimes there's challenging soils, steep forested ravines, and then there's deer. About 70% of our clients have deer pressures. So all the plants I shared today are natives, and all have pretty good deer resistance, at least in our area. You never can tell with deer. One question I always get, and the biggest challenge I face on our own property, what grows in dry shade? Well, white wood aster is a fantastic perennial for these conditions. White wood aster, formerly known as Aster divaricata, is now renamed Eurybia divaricata. I especially like the cultivar Eastern Star, which is slightly more mounding and compact with larger flowers. Growing 1 to 2 feet tall, it's covered in the fall with small white daisies that dance in this abundance over the delicate burgundy stems. From August until September, October, even, the blooms provide a valuable nectar source for butterflies and other pollinators. White wood aster is hardy, zone 3 to 8, and it's native to open woodlands throughout most of the eastern United States. Not only is it a valuable plant for poor soils and dry shade, it also tolerates black walnut and salt. How to use it? Well, plant it anywhere you have shade. It's well behaved enough to include in a perennial border or woodland garden, or encourage it to seed and spread as an interweaving ground cover, as a mass planting, or even a cottage garden plant. But do recognize that Eastern Star, the cultivar won't come true from seed. To keep the plant more compact and reduce seeding, you can simply cut it back to 6 inches in the spring, or cut off the spent blooms in the fall. Eurivia, Divaricatum, Eastern Star, White Wood Aster. Another great dry shade plant and a good companion to the wood aster is Pennsylvania sedge, Carex pennsylvanica. Native to eastern and central North America, Quebec to Arkansas, it's a fine-textured grass-like plant with blades about 12 to 15 inches tall and this beautiful arching fountain shape. The habit is absolutely gorgeous in the shade garden. It's hardy, zone 3 to 8. It also tolerates black walnut trees and provides food and habitat for wildlife. Pennsylvania sedge creeps slowly by rhizomes, forming a soft ground cover. If you have shade where your grass won't grow, you might try using it as a low-traffic lawn substitute. I use it with a matrix of ferns, heucheras, and other natives for woodland gardens and to hold slopes, and it is beautiful as an edge plant in garden borders too. Please try and get to know some of the very useful native sedges, including this one, Carex pennsylvanica, Pennsylvania sedge. Next, I'd like to speak of a few plants for those that have the opposite problem, wet soil in the sun. These plants should be fairly happy in typical gardens too. Physostegia virginiana, the obedient plant. Note, this species is not so obedient and can be an aggressive spreader. The cultivar Miss Manners is much better behaved. With stunning spires of long blooming flowers, dark green foliage, this is one of my favorite showy native perennials. Hardy zone 3 through 9, and it's native throughout eastern North America, even west to Texas and North Dakota. Obedient plant is problem-solving tough. It is a great plant for a number of situations. We often use it in rain gardens, as it will tolerate several days of complete inundation, as well as be just fine when the soils dry out. It tolerates salt and black walnuts pretty well. I especially love the white cultivar Miss Manners, which at 1.5 to 2 feet tall is half the height, extremely showy and well behaved. It is a clump former, unlike the species and some of the other cultivars. The snapdragon-like flowers have a really long bloom period, June to September. We use this regularly in many of our perennial plantings. Bumblebees, butterflies, hummingbirds, they all love obedient plant, while the deer in our area tend to leave it alone. I find that the upright, spiky blooms contrast so beautifully with daisies and a lot of the more rounded flowers of our native perennials. Physostegia virginiana, Miss Manners, the obedient plant. This next plant you may not know, Pycnanthemum muticum, mountain mint. This one is a workhorse for those really challenging sites. It can be competitive, but it's usually not overly aggressive. It tolerates sun or shade, wet soils, dry soils, essentially anything you throw at it, it can handle. It's a mint, so remember to give it lots of room. However, it can be kept in control with a sharp spade in the spring. A long-blooming zone 4 to 8 perennial, it's native from Maine to Texas and is probably the showiest of the mountain mints. You might want to check out some of the others as well. This one has 2 to 3 foot tall foliage that's beautiful and aromatic. The flowers may be white to a purpley pink, and they bloom above silvery bracts in the summer. We use this mountain mint for many tough sites to hold slopes against erosion, for large rain gardens, bioswales, and in landscapes that have a lot of deer browse. It's fairly salt tolerant too. But its most important attribute, this is a pollinator magnet. It attracts more beneficial insects and butterflies than any perennial I have observed. Swarming with life, you must see this plant to believe it. Pycnanthemum muticum, short-toothed mountain mint, is a perennial that should be better known and grown. One last plant I'd like to slip in, Hibiscus mosquitos, our native swamp mallow, and it's absolutely gorgeous hybrids. This one is dramatic, 3 to 7 feet tall, with blooms the size of dinner plates. This zone 5 to 9 shrub-like perennial is native across much of the eastern United States. Cultivars come in a variety of heights and colors, so you probably can find one suitable even to your small garden. I love Hibiscus summerific evening rose for its stunning dark foliage and its huge deep rose flowers that are up to 8 inches across. Rose mallow prefers full sun, good soil, and consistent moisture. It even grows at the edges of ponds, can tolerate the challenges of rain gardens, or it can simply be a bold focal point in a garden bed. In the spring, it tends to be slow to start. Usually the shoots begin emerging in late May here in Ohio. I tend to leave the stems up in the winter for winter interest and then overplant it with spring ephemerals. Blooming from July to September, the nectar and the seed support many of our pollinators and songbirds. Hibiscus mosquitos, swamp mallow, and its cultivars, an absolutely eye-popping native for moist soils. Thank you so much for having me. Happy spring planting.
Carol, you must have such an amazing time when you go out and photograph Sabrina's gardens, because she's a joy to listen to. So just to hear her probably walk through a garden is incredible.
Yeah, and she's got such a calming presence, and she loves the plants and the ecological sort of aspect of gardening. So yeah, it really comes through when you see these gardens that she and her husband Samuel design. Super, super cool. Not what you expect in Akron, Ohio.
No, definitely. And oh, if people want to see a beautiful garden that she designed, and actually a gorgeous photograph that you took that ended up being the cover of Fine Gardening, it was issue, do we remember?
Wait, I don't know. I've got the episode of the podcast written down, but not the issue. But what I'll do, I'll throw a link into the show notes so that if people want to see that article, it'll be right there.
That would be amazing. Yeah, I want to say it was 212. I could be wrong, but 212, 213 kind of hover in that area. And it was an absolutely beautiful garden that Carol shot with Sabrina Schweier as the designer with her husband, Samuel. All right, we're going to bring it on home. I went for the funny factor. Like, I started thinking about the funniest guests that we had. And this next individual is Riz Reyes. And he is a designer, a garden designer out in Seattle, and an amazing container garden designer out in Seattle. And he is young and he is energetic. And every time you're around him, you just are super, super inspired by the way he thinks about plants and the way he combines plants. But we reached out to Riz to do best container plants, and it was spring. And it was crazy busy. So Riz decided to tape his expert testimony while he was driving in the car on the way to a job. And it is the most hilarious, frenetic, crazy recording ever, to the point of our producer came back and said, wow, that was really crazy, but so funny and good. So yeah, I had to pick this one.
Good morning. I'm Riz Reyes, and I live in the Pacific Northwest near Seattle, and I am late to work. So my friends at Fine Gardening magazine asked me to choose 3 or 4 of my favorite plants for containers, and I can't even how. Like, there's just too many. So that's the thing, I struggle with these requests, because am I supposed to choose plants that everyone can grow, or my absolute favorites, annuals, perennials? I mean, you can put basically anything in a container. So how do you even begin to choose? I need parameters here, what size, what height, whatever. So I don't know, what do I have? I'd say I love ferns. Everyone loves ferns here in the Pacific Northwest. You have to love ferns to live here in the Pacific Northwest. And one of my favorites are pyrosias. And they are known as the felt fern or tongue fern. And there's many different species, but I'm really drawn to different cultivars of Pyrosia lingua, the tongue fern. And because they're evergreen and they have really beautiful textures, and I'm just really infatuated with them. But another favorite species that I love to grow in a container, and I actually have 2 large specimens of it in these ceramic containers, is the species Shirei, Pyrosia shirei. It's originally from Taiwan, and it is the most attractive, most architectural, sculptural plant I could think of to put in a container. So it's very upright in its habit, really long leaves that have the most beautiful undersides where the spores would be. It starts out kind of tannish white, and then matures to a russet brown, and then when the spores develop, it's just the most intriguing, most fascinating specimen that I could think of in a container. So okay, that would be one. And then second, hostas. Okay, everyone can grow hostas, right? So let's talk about hostas in pots. So gosh, again, there's many different kinds, but I love using them because of the instant impact they have, especially when you choose a variety with the really large leaves that are just a big and bold statement in any kind of planting scheme. And I love them in general. So they're nice to have because when you plant them in a container, you sort of elevate the plant. You make it known, and it becomes a focal point all of a sudden when it's up and raised up in a container. Dancing Queen actually comes to mind with its beautiful golden foliage and grayish undersides, and the veining on it is very prominent veins that make it look just really elegant and really architectural and bold, and just by itself or with a few annuals at the base of it is all you need. Speaking of annuals, I would say Coleus is my go-to container favorite. And I love the fact that there's different types, bumpy colors, and yeah, there's different colors and habits too. There are upright ones, fuller ones, even a cascading variety, like the Wedding Trail series, I believe is what it's called. Wedding Train or something like that is one I use frequently. You think I'd use frequently, I'd know the name of it by now. But so they're reliable, they're dependable, and also what I love about them is they root so easy. So when you break off a stem, you can put it in water and it'll make a new plant. So anytime I take a picture of it or